Hey guys, this is the Last Set podcast, number one MMA podcast in the world, especially in Australia. You'll notice that we've got a little bit of a different setup today, obviously on Zoom. I know that last podcast we were just talking about how great Perth was and kind of shot ourselves in the foot and probably should avoid talking about how good Perth is anymore because we've just had some positive case. Well, we had one positive case. Someone traveling from Perth to Melbourne apparently came out of his 14-day quarantine, posted was negative at first, was then positive in Melbourne, calls back to Perth. He's then interacted with so many people in Perth. And now we've got, I think, two other people, a male and a female candidate that have both tested positive. So unfortunately, we have to do the Zoom podcast, but we just finished watching UFC 260 and honestly, incredible card in general anyway, but the main card, every single fight, and obviously there's their own, controversies within the card, but every single fight on the main card, all finishes. All finishes and brilliant. Let's start off with Jorge Masvidal getting knocked out by Kamaru Usman. Who saw that coming?
Oh. Well, I mean, let's just start off with the fact that this was the first time we've actually had a full crowd since COVID, and it sold out and it's just sold out within minutes. And it delivered because when you're coming back for the first time on a full crowd, you have to have that star power. Now, people were kind of questioning from the start that, Kamaru Usman is boring. Well, here's the thing. He's not a boring fighter anymore. No. He put Masvidal to sleep in that second round, and quite frankly, I did not see it coming at all. I thought it was going to go on to the later rounds. I mean, the knockout was evident because we've seen Usman. He's such a more proficient striker. I mean, he put Gilbert Burns away. I think he was just, he wanted that fight in the first place, and he took it and he owned it from the get-go. One thing I was really impressed with was he really wanted to keep it standing right to the end of the first round. That was when he took him down, and then he held him on the ground for quite some time. But he knew that the fans would want to see a standoff, and that's what he delivered on. I'm impressed, really. What about you?
Hugely impressed by Kamaru Usman. I've never really got the critics of saying he was boring. And the only thing to me was maybe the foot stomps. I never found them particularly effective. I thought it was fine. If he presses people up against the cage, that's fine. He's still controlling. And he tends to do shots to the body, typically just body rips to the body or kneeing in the legs. And that does damage. The foot stomps I never understood. And I find that part a boring aspect of his game. But the dude can strike, and he continues to level up every single fight. It's incredible the difference he makes, and I think perhaps the proficiency in his striking can be allocated to his work ethic as well as Trevor Whitman's coaching. I think Trevor Whitman he does a lot of work on each of these fighters like Rose, and we'll talk about her later. But footwork, distance control, and being smart with your shots, working out which ones, because he started in the first round, he started to get a little bit, Jorge started to draw him out a little bit more. He started to start throwing wildly, putting a little bit too much power in his shots. And I think in that second round, he's had a chat with Trevor, and he's managed to recalibrate and just work a little bit more selectively. I thought Masvidal was doing very well in the first round, piecing up his leg. And I think he was going for the low calf kicks just because he knew Usman's jab has got a lot better, a lot more proficient, and it's just a tough thing to get behind as well in order to actually set up your shots. It's usually Jorge that's the busy striker, yet it was Usman with the busy jab connecting over and over and over. And to be honest, Usman just is impressing everyone right now. 100% he should be the number one pound for pound. Like in the next week or so, I believe he'll be in the top 3 right now currently. But I don't know who changes the rankings. He's got to be number 1. You can't deny how long his win streak has been in one of the busiest divisions ever.
Well, I mean, we always talk about like, who is the go, and it's a common conversation that happens within the UFC committee. I mean, George St. Pierre, phenomenal. He's the guy who held on to his title for so long, had so many title defenses. He avenged both of his losses. But the issue is like Kamaru is just a steamroll, and he's just going through and he's lapping. He's so good now that he's actually lapping over the division. I mean, it's up for debate. Oh, when they lose, they win a fight. They're like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. But Kamaru Usman is just leaving no doubt. And he'd already beaten Masvidal before, and there was already calls for it because it was 6 days, and he gave him 6 weeks, and he still beat him in spectacular fashion. I think I would say it now that even though, again, Usman isn't the GOAT, he's on his way. He's on his way, I can give you that. But one thing I'm going to give you now, I actually honestly would say he is the best welterweight right now, the best welterweight of all time. Just his win streak, I think his win streak is tied with George St. Pierre now.
I think his win streak has beat GSP's currently.
Yep.
However, it's a little bit different because he hasn't done the amount of title defenses. So GSP's actual fight win streak is mainly consisting of title defenses. Kamaru still needs to allocate more of those wins to title defenses in order to be better. The two other candidates other than Kamaru for greatest welterweight of all time in the UFC, is obviously GSP. That's a normal idea, and then there's Matt Hughes, and Matt Hughes is still up there for sure. It's just Kamaru just needs to stay ready, stay busy. He's only 33, expected to improve a lot better. And with Trevor Whitman in his corner, I can't see him slowing down. Now, Colby Covington has now came out. He was actually at the UFC 260. A huge amount of interviews with the Schmo and everyone there, and I think with Megan and Olivia as well. But now we're going to see Colby Covington rematching Kamaru Usman, which is especially the fight that I was personally looking for because let's be real. When Masvidal first fought Kamaru Usman, it was a 43-50 fight, right? 50-43. And I believe that was unanimous across all judges, right? I don't think anyone saw anything really different. So the person that put Kamaru in the worst spots and took major rounds from him was Colby. Arguably in the round, and I don't even think there's arguably, but people just say arguably. Coming into the fifth round, it was 2-2. It was a very close fight. And to be honest, you might not agree with the ref decision. I know Colby doesn't, but Colby he was the greatest competitor against Kamaru Usman, and you cannot deny that now. Now that you've got the Masvidal thing out of the way, which was a great spectacle, definitely had to answer a few questions. Now we've got Colby versus Masvidal, and it's very. I know you brought up GSP, which is really. What I was going to bring up as well is that Usman is very reminiscent of GSP because they're in the same division, incredibly dominant champion, and now that the champion is literally the most active fighter in the welterweight division, and he's continuing to lap people. Like the only people that could possibly be, I mean, even if he fought Leon Edwards, that's a rematch again. They've already fought. That was Leon Edwards' last loss. So the only people other than those that we can think of that wouldn't be a rematch if they fought again would be Wonderboy Thompson and maybe Hamza or Bilal or other fighters like this. Everyone else, it would all be a rematch. And that says something to how dominant Usman is. It's
a bit of a sticky situation because the thing is, Colby Covington, he's definitely improved since he lost to Kamaru. Considering that was a very close fight leading up to that last round, he was fighting on a broken jaw as well after the first round, and the volume of strikes that Colby put out was absolutely insane. And he's a pressure fighter, and really, it's considering it was only just not too long ago when they fought. I do believe Colby is the next opponent for sure. And then I'm kind of eager to see what happens with Leon Edwards. Now, the best thing about where Usman is at right now is that he is definitely on his way to becoming probably the number one contender for the GOAT or the GOAT status, is because there's still quite a fair bit of competition in the welterweight division. Now, if Leon Edwards wins the next fight against Nate Diaz, which I believe will be on the Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira card, then I believe that Leon Edwards is 100% a candidate to be the next contender for the welterweight title. I understand, because I felt like saying he should deserve it after, poking Bilal in the eye that fight. That was one of the previous podcasts. Go back and watch that one. But I do believe that this fight is worthy for him to prove it, considering it's now a money fight now that Diaz is back. So I do believe that it's next is Colby, then it's Leon, and then further down the track, maybe we can have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson or Hamza Chimaev. But this is really good for Kamaru's spot, because he's now in his prime, and he's still got heaps of more people to put away to prove that he is probably one of the greatest fighters of all, if not the greatest fighter of all time. And that just further solidifies him. So I'm pretty excited for what's going on right now in the welterweight division.
Yeah, I'm hugely excited. I mean, to be fair, when we break down Usman's win over Jorge, now originally that was a 50-43, pretty much just originally the original thought process for this fight was it was going to happen the exact same it was. Same, maybe different fight, same outcome, and we were correct that way. However, I did not see the TKO win taking place, because last time when Kamaru Usman was unable to, stand toe-to-toe with Jorge on the feet, he then resorted to wrestling, putting him up against the cage, taking him down, and being very dominant and being very dominant with his wrestling skills. Now we saw the rematch. He's leveled up. He's leveled up by he's changed. He's changed hugely. Now it was interesting as well, because Jorge said he's one of the the weakest hitters, one of the softest hitters in the welterweight division, and yet he's the first person to ever knock out Jorge. Jorge's last finish was it was a reverse triangle back in Bellator. It was his second Bellator fight. Very weird. It was definitely something that no one expected. That right overhand just absolutely connected, and he did a few things during the fight to actually set that up. It looked like he went for a pump fake, then just put everything into that right hand, connected. Jorge was out. He was out on his feet. You can actually see as he fell down, he actually knocks Kamaru's shoulder while he's unconscious on his feet, slams on the floor, and then Kamaru gets maybe 4 or 5 more shots in, and then the ref comes over around the back of him and waves it off. Jorge gets up later on. He goes, "Hey, what's going on? What happened?" He was in utter disbelief that it actually happened. Absolutely, he didn't know what was going on, and that's the thing. I'm glad he didn't object to the stoppage, because it was clean and it was dominant. And to be honest, the more we get to know about Kamaru's not so nice past when it comes to his family history and what happened to his father, being in jail for 30 years for a crime that he allegedly hasn't committed. Look, it just makes him, I find, with the more wins he accumulates and the more of his story and more human he seems to be, and not a fake put on personality like, what we might have seen in the past, he seems more and more likable. And I think if he continues to be dominant, but in an explosive fashion, collecting finishes like this, I could actually see him going past GSP's record. But obviously, that's a long way to go. But I could see him maybe passing Max Hughes's, welterweight record and then GSP's. But look, that's in the future. But honestly, Kamaru, he's impressed me so much lately. He keeps staying so active. His last fight with Gilbert Burns was not that long ago. Quick turnaround. He was even rocked in that fight. Was not afraid to actually go in against Jorge, who's a very dangerous kickboxer. Yeah. He's fought in so many different organizations, right? Now we get to see. Now we get to see what he'll do next against Colby, and silences a lot of questions. If he beats Colby, look, it silences so many haters. And look, I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed.